Right now, 342,000 Australians don't have a place to call home. That's more people than live in the entire city of Canberra, Australia's capital. But here's what the government doesn't want you to know. This isn't an accident. It's a system designed to keep people homeless while billionaires get richer. I'm about to show you a crisis so devastating that the Australian government classified their own report about it as too dangerous for public release. Because if tourists and investors knew the truth about homelessness in the lucky country, Australia's image would collapse overnight. Meet Sarah Chun. 3 years ago, she was a primary school teacher in Sydney, making $68,000 a year, living in a small but comfortable apartment. She had a stable job, good credit, and thought she was living a middle-class life. Today, Sarah sleeps in her 2010 Toyota Camry in the parking lot of a 24-hour McDonald's in one of Sydney's wealthiest suburbs. What happened to Sarah is happening to hundreds of thousands of Australians right now, and it could happen to you faster than you think. But wait, before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of our essential videos. Comment, "I subscribe" below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. Sarah's landlord sold her apartment to developers. She had 30 days to find a new place. With her teacher's salary, she could afford $400 per week in rent. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing, available for under $650. I applied for 47 apartments, Sarah told me. I had perfect rental history, steady employment, and savings for bond. Didn't matter. Every place had 200 other applicants. Now Sarah showers at the school where she teaches, stores her clothes in her classroom closet, and sleeps in her car. Her students don't know their teacher is homeless. Her principal doesn't know. Her family doesn't know. She's part of Australia's invisible homeless epidemic. Here's the statistic that made Australia's Treasury Department panic. 1 in 76 Australians is homeless. That's the highest rate in the developed world. Higher than the United States. Higher than any European country. The Australian Bureau of Statistics released data in 2024 showing homelessness has increased 89% in just 3 years. But here's Dr. James Mitchell's story that proves this crisis has reached unprecedented levels. Dr. Mitchell is a cardiac surgeon. He saves lives every day at Sydney's Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. He earns $280,000 a year, more than 95% of Australians. And he's been sleeping in his car in the hospital parking garage for 8 months. After taxes, I take home about $180,000, Dr. Mitchell explained to me. My rent was $2,800 a month, which was manageable. Then my landlord raised it to $4,200. I couldn't find anywhere cheaper within an hour of the hospital. I can't move further away because I'm on call for emergency surgeries. So I sleep in my car and shower in the hospital locker room. A heart surgeon sleeping in his car. If that doesn't terrify you about Australia's housing crisis, nothing will. But the worst part isn't who's homeless. It's how the government is systematically hiding them from tourists and the international community. Australia conducts what they call homeless sweeps before every major international event. Police raids that destroy homeless camps, confiscate belongings, and arrest people whose only crime is not having a home. The goal isn't to help homeless people. It's to make them invisible. Maria Santos learned this the hard way. She was living in a tent under a bridge in Melbourne with her 8-year-old daughter after losing their apartment. The police came at 4 a.m., Maria told me. They said the area needed to be cleaned up for a tourism promotion. They threw away everything we owned. Our clothes, my daughter's school books, her stuffed animals. We had to start over with nothing. The UN Human Rights Committee released a scathing report in 2024 finding that Australia systematically violates international housing rights through these sweeps. But Australian media barely covered the report, and the government dismissed it as foreign interference. Here's what's even more heartbreaking. Maria's daughter was placed in foster care not because Maria was an unfit mother, but because Child Protective Services said living in a tent was inappropriate housing. Maria lost her child because she couldn't afford rent. The state separated a loving family to hide homelessness from tourists. But here's the shocking reason so many Australians are becoming homeless, and it's not what you think. The housing scam that's destroying Australian families starts with one terrifying number. The average Australian now spends 78% of their income on rent or mortgage payment. The United Nations defines a housing crisis as when people spend more than 30% of income on housing. Australia is nearly triple that threshold. Tom Bradley discovered this when his landlord doubled his rent overnight. Tom is an electrician making $85,000 a year, a good salary in most countries. His rent went from $450 per week to $900 per week. I had two choices, Tom explained. Pay the increase and have no money for food, or become homeless. I chose homeless. The Reserve Bank of Australia released classified data in 2024 showing rental affordability is now worse than during the Great Depression. But here's what makes this crisis even more infuriating. There are enough houses for everyone. The problem is who owns them. Foreign investors are buying Australian homes not to live in them, but to keep them empty as tax write-offs. Chinese billionaires, American hedge funds, and European investment firms own hundreds of thousands of properties across Australia that sit vacant while families sleep in cars. In Sydney alone, 87,000 properties sit empty while 58,000 people are homeless. The math is simple. There are more empty homes than homeless people. But keeping homes empty is more profitable than renting them out because of Australia's bizarre tax system that rewards vacancy over occupancy. That's when I discovered the banking conspiracy that guarantees more Australians will become homeless. Lisa Wong worked as a mortgage manager for one of Australia's big four banks for 12 years. What she told me will make you never trust Australian banks again. We had internal quotas for foreclosures, Lisa revealed. Management would literally tell us how many homes we needed to repossess each quarter to meet profit targets. Here's how the scam works. Banks deliberately approve mortgages for people they know can't afford them long-term. They use artificially low teaser rates for the first 2 years, then jack up interest rates to levels that guarantee default. When families can't make payments, the bank seizes the house and sells it for pure profit. The Banking Royal Commission found evidence of this predatory lending, but the leaked documents Lisa showed me prove it's still happening. Banks have internal spreadsheets tracking which mortgage holders are most likely to default, and they actively target those families with rate increases designed to trigger foreclosure. Right now, 250,000 Australian families are less than 3 months away from losing their homes. That's 250,000 families about to join the homeless population because banks are more interested in seizing assets than collecting mortgage payments. But here's who's really profiting from Australia's homelessness crisis, and it will make your blood boil. 6 billionaires control 40% of Australia's rental market. They own hundreds of thousands of properties, charge whatever rent they want because there's no competition, and here's the kicker. They receive government subsidies for owning these properties. David Park is a military veteran who served 3 tours in Afghanistan. He pays $800 per week to rent a basic 2-bedroom apartment in Brisbane. His landlord? A billionaire who owns 47,000 properties across Australia and pays zero income tax because of property depreciation write-offs. I'm paying $800 a week to a guy who's never seen my apartment, doesn't live in Australia, and uses my rent payments to claim tax deductions that reduce his tax to zero, David explained. Meanwhile, I'm spending 85% of my veteran's pension on rent for a place that's falling apart. A parliamentary inquiry in 2024 found that $12 billion in government housing subsidies go to wealthy property investors every year. That's $12 billion of taxpayer money given to billionaires to help them buy more properties to rent back to the same taxpayers at inflated prices. The government is literally paying billionaires to keep Australians homeless while funding the system that creates homelessness. It's the most profitable scam in Australian history, and veterans, teachers, nurses, and even doctors are the victims. But the cruelest part of Australia's homelessness crisis is what happens to the children, and it's tearing families apart in ways that would be illegal in most countries. 47,000 Australian children are currently in foster care not because their parents are abusive or neglectful, but because their families became homeless. Child Protective Services has a policy that homelessness equals neglect, so they automatically remove children from homeless parents for the child's safety. Amanda Torres lost custody of her 6-year-old daughter Emma not because she was a bad mother, but because she couldn't afford a 2-bedroom apartment after her ex-husband stopped paying child support. They said living in a one-bedroom was inappropriate for a child. Amanda sobbed as she told me her story. I'm a good mom. I work full-time as a nurse. But because I can't afford $2,500 a month for a bigger apartment, they took my daughter away. Emma is now in foster care with strangers while Amanda works double shifts, trying to save enough money to afford the larger apartment the court requires for reunification. The foster parents receive $800 per week from the government to care for Emma, more money than Amanda's entire rent budget. Leaked documents from the Department of Human Services show child removals due to housing issues are up 180% since 2020. Australia is systematically destroying families to hide homelessness, then paying strangers more to care for these children than it would cost to house the original families. The cruelty is breathtaking. The waste is astronomical. The trauma to children is permanent. But there's one solution that could fix everything, and it's being deliberately ignored. Finland had a homelessness crisis worse than Australia's in 2008. Today, Finland has virtually eliminated homelessness. How? They implemented a housing-first policy. Give people homes first, then address other issues. It sounds simple because it is simple. The Finnish housing ministry proved that housing homeless people costs less than managing homelessness. Emergency services, police responses, hospital visits, court proceedings, and foster care cost more than just giving people apartments. Finland now spends 40% less on homelessness-related services while housing 98% of their previously homeless population. I met Marcus Johnson, who was homeless in Helsinki for 3 years before Finland's Housing First program gave him an apartment. Today, Marcus has a job, pays taxes, volunteers with other formerly homeless people, and hasn't cost the government a cent in emergency services in 5 years. They gave me an address, so I could get a bank account. With a bank account, I could get a job. With a job, I could rebuild my life, Marcus explained. It's not complicated. People just need a safe place to start over. Australia's politicians have studied Finland's model. They know it works. They know it's cheaper. They know it will end homelessness in 5 years. But they've rejected every proposal to implement it, and now I know why. Homelessness is too profitable to eliminate. Property investors need artificial scarcity to justify high rents. Banks need foreclosures to seize valuable assets. Foster care agencies need children to maintain their funding. Police departments need homeless people to justify their budgets. Politicians need a crisis to campaign on without actually solving. Australia could end homelessness tomorrow. They choose not to because too many powerful people profit from keeping 342,000 Australians without homes. So here's my question for you, and I want honest answers because this crisis is getting worse every single day. Have you noticed homelessness increasing in your Australian city? Are you struggling with rent or mortgage payments that seem impossible to maintain? Do you know families who've been separated because of housing issues? Share your story in the comments below, because every comment helps expose the crisis our government is desperately trying to hide from international attention. And if you know someone who's homeless or about to become homeless, I've pinned resources in the top comment that might literally save their life. Because right now, we're watching the systematic destruction of Australian families for profit, and the only way to stop it is to make sure everyone knows the truth about what's really happening in the lucky country.